So today for you, I have an article from The Atlantic called "Do Married Millennials Cheat on Each Other?" To give you a flavor of what the text is like, the opening line is, "Millennials have killed malls, cheese, and bar soap. Their thirst for blood is unslaked. They're now coming for good, old-fashioned cheating." Um, I thought that was pretty entertaining to say the least. So it sucked me in. The long and short of it was that, as we're all aware now, millennials get blamed for everything from this to killing napkins, crappy restaurants like Applebee's and Buffalo Wild Wings because they suck, and other such locations, other things. We're all being blamed because somehow these industries are so amazing. Yes.
Uh, how did we kill Buffalo Wild Wings?
Basically, because millennials don't go to restaurants like Applebee's and Buffalo Wild Wings. That's the claim. My claim,
That's
my
bullshit.
counterclaim. Well, my counterclaim is like, I used to go to Applebee's and then I learned how to microwave my own food, so I stopped going.
The napkin one, though, that might be true.
Yeah, the napkin one in particular, I know in my house anyway, we just use paper towels. My grandma used to buy napkins, but like I don't think I've ever bought napkins, so that one wouldn't surprise me.
But
And like I said,
as you said, we're being blamed for killing the shittiest buffalo wing restaurant. We're being blamed for what, not purchasing two kinds of redundant paper products for the kitchen.
yep.
And what was the other one that you said? Uh,
Applebee's, Buffalo Wild Wings, malls, cheese, bar soap. The list goes on and on. Basically, ever since they've
yeah,
termed.
it had to be millennials that killed shopping malls. It couldn't be the ridiculous rents that they try and charge and then claim that it's for expenses. The malls die because no business wants to be in them. Especially, I know it's getting harder and harder to have a food court because
Yep.
anyone that I've ever talked to who worked at or was associated with a restaurant that was at the mall talks about how they struggle to pay just the rent, and so it cuts off such a huge level amount of your a huge amount of your profitability that, yeah, it makes total sense that those things are dying. Though, are they trying to say that it's our fault because the internet?
I don't know. I just know that's the opening line to the article. But again, like
Okay.
anytime there's an industry that's struggling, you're almost guaranteed to find an article somewhere that says, "Well, this industry is struggling because of millennials," and that somehow we're at fault for killing it.
Right.
So, the point of this article, however, was infidelity. And as it turns out, there's this study that they've been doing every year for decades, and they always look at the same age groups. So in the 2000s, between like 2000 and 2004, the 18 to 55 age group was more likely to be, you know, non-monogamous and commit acts of adultery, as it were, than older crowds. But then in 2004, it flipped, and the gap has been increasing ever since. So now currently, it's actually the 55 and older group that are more likely to be cheaters than millennials. Um, I like this quote in the article. They say, "Today, the hot new thing for married couples apparently is having sex with each other until you die. Barring any unforeseen developments, we should anticipate a future of more monogamous marriage."
But Michael, if you ask any Christian that we've ever met, they will tell you that values like the family and blah 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 blah, that
Yep.
all those things have been dying, because there's too many atheists running around and nobody reads their Bible enough. And but here is just another stark proof that the idea that you need religion for morality is just a garbage person argument. And
Yep.
the reason that people our age cheat on each other less is probably because we're smarter and we're able to engage emotionally at a more fundamental level than our parents' generation and older, who are just so Victorian and emotionally inept in comparison to younger people. It's a gap that's, at least in my life, I have thought there's a similarity between our parents and our grandparents, and I'm lucky enough I still have one of my great grandparents still alive. My great grandmother's in her 90s, and there's those three generations are similar. And then there's a very big difference in the way that emotionally that we talk and speak, even compared to people that are just like 7 or 8 years older than us.
Well, and it's interesting because this article tied into another one about just sex in general.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they pointed out is that the baby boomer crowd and then the generation between them and millennials, that those two generations, ostensibly your parents and your grandparents, it was that sexual revolution and then the children who resulted of that. So technically, your great grandmother was probably more prudish, probably not as sexually liberated, etc. It's those two generations, for whatever reason, that got married young. They had kids very young, but then also they were doing it out of wedlock a lot more. The divorce rates were way higher, and
That
so
was that's both of our stories. Our parents were both very young.
I suspect that because on the whole, I know we all knew kids that they had a two-parent household and siblings and yada yada, but I had a lot of friends. It was a one-parent household, or they'd spent time splitting between mom and dad, and they'd move back and forth, and they had a
Mm-hmm.
room in each place. As you said, you and I were both raised by single mothers. It was way more common to see young teen single moms, at least as far as I know. I'm not an expert, so you could prove me wrong. But from what I can tell, that seems to be a theme with our generation. So maybe the fact that we have this personal firsthand experience of what that life is like, that's maybe why we're waiting longer to get married. We're waiting longer to have sex. They mentioned 10 years ago, 54% of kids in high school reported having sex. Now it's 40%. And that number's on the decline. Teen pregnancy is on the decline since the 90s. All these other trends are happening. Some people are now starting to worry it might be because we are now moving away from personal intimacy and that might be a new problem. But in general, all of these other things that come with that, like infidelity, monogamous relationships, all those things are working much better. And maybe, you know, I'm no expert. Maybe it's because I saw the way my mom lived and I thought, I don't want that for myself.
I mean, everybody's going to have their own story in and their own experience, obviously. But just speaking super broadly, super generally, I think that, as I said, I think there is a distinct emotional gap and expressive, um, sort of an expressive barrier that I would argue that in fact the internet has been a positive force in this because it has encouraged people to be more expressive in a lot of different ways. That when you mentioned that they were saying like, oh, it's potentially that social media and the internet is destroying the essence of personal intimacy, that maybe I'm wrong here, but I suspicion that whoever's heading up that research might be an aging professor with a bias against the internet because that just sounds that argument sounds really stupid. The
Yeah.
idea that the internet's going to kill love. It can't possibly be that we have better sex education, that we have a more secularized liberal social society, and that girls are expecting to have more agency and all of these things. Like, it couldn't possibly be that those things are leading to these positive changes of lower teen pregnancy, greater monogamy, etc. It
Yeah.
couldn't
And in my
possibly be those
experience,
things. It has to be that we're fucking millennials and that the internet's bad and oh, you spend too much time on your phone, therefore.
yeah. And in my experience, it might, as you said, it might actually be better access to information, like about contraceptives, about sex in general. Like, I don't know about you, when I was a kid, yeah, I saw porn on the internet. I also saw lots of articles, or lots of, Dear Abbeys that would say things like, oh, I don't like this. And it would say, oh, talk to your partner, be communicative, be intimate, be nice, and all of this other information that wasn't just like porn. My parents, they probably only had access to the Playboys they found under dad's bed or something. We had way more information, and maybe we're using that to our benefit because we realize, hey, I don't want to have kids right now, or hey, like there's risks associated with this. Even though I'm young or what have you, I'm not going to do it because I don't want a kid. I don't want STDs. I don't want these other risks. And as you said, more empowerment to the women may be making a difference as well. Women are, more comfortable speaking out and saying, no, I don't want that. And I'm not going to be pressured into this or feel like I need to have a boyfriend or need to have whatever to be socially accepted.